Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Books. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Agatha All Along, Season 1, Episode 7. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I thought it was so interesting where it kind of seemed like we're starting with Lilia, but then we catch back up with Billy and Agatha. And Agatha's like, right, so... she's like, go ahead. You're trying to read my mind. Tell me what you're trying to think. What's on your... like, if you have questions, just ask me. I'm actually blanking. There was a first question he asked her, and she was like, nah, I'm not going to answer that. Pick something else. I don't remember. And then it's like, is Wanda actually dead? Well, because he actually said like at first he's like, she's not my mom. I have a mom, which I don't know. I'm curious what that stems from, because I guess maybe he's kind of heard, about what Wanda did. So finding out like I'm her child, that's why he's probably, but he is also still like, that still is my mom. Like, is she alive? And it's like, is she dead? It's like, yes. No. Maybe. It's like, did you see the body? And it's like, did anyone? Well, she said yes, and then like, did anyone else? And Agatha never really answered, so thought that was interesting. It's like, how did you, like, well, she's only saying that because of the projection of the spell. She wasn't there when a literal mountain fell on Wanda. I don't know. I just thought that was such a fascinating thing of like, I don't know if she's toying with the teen, giving him false answers. But then later on, he does the tarot thing. He's like, whoa, you're being truthful. And it's like, does that play into her narrative? Because the teen just doesn't know what to really do with tarot because he's not a tarot reader. I don't know. But I don't know. It's fascinating. I also love that it's like, I guess, like classic witches. So she's dressed up as a Wicked Witch from Wizard of Oz. He's dressed up as Maleficent. He's like, well, with these cheekbones... I wonder if that a double layer thing, because I'm like, well, I guess I never paid attention to Maleficent's cheekbones, but I'm also thinking like, well, the most recent version of Maleficent would be Angelina Jolie's portrayal in the movies, which I've never seen, but I mean, I've seen what she looks like as Maleficent, so I wonder if there's something to that. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. But that, like I said, is that just a commentary on the character, or is that a commentary on like specifically like Angelina Jolie's cheekbones as a character? Like I said, I'm probably reading way too much into that. I do appreciate Agatha's approach to tarot. It's like, nah, we're doing this like a puzzle in a video game. We're just going to brute force this. Put down card. She's like, it's a numbers game. It's like she's just putting down random cards and it's not helping, and the swords are dropping from the ceiling. So that's fascinating. But either way, all the while that's happening, the episode's mainly about Lilia, which I was hoping it would be, and it is. And we find out what Lilia's deal is. She's slipping through the gaps. In an interesting way, you could almost look at it, it's what my mind eventually went to is, oh, it's kind of like the magical version of time slipping that Loki was going through in season 2. I thought that was so interesting. You're getting like the magic equivalency. It's not like she herself time traveled, it's her consciousness. And so you're like, someone had predicted that. Not predicted, but like theorized that that's what was going on. I want to say it was like on the break room. Maybe New Rockstars had kind of, maybe that might be where I heard that. Because I do remember someone saying like, oh, is she like time traveling in a way? And she kind of is. Basically, and oh, it's really interesting too, because it's like, I was about to say, it's like her consciousness is only traveling from the future to the past, right? Never in verse, but it's like, no, her last advice to Agatha seems like, no, she's definitely like been to the future. This version of her kind of went to the future. I think it's a situation of, because she's always... It's going to be a wild analogy or comparison. If you've ever seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it might be like a Yo-Yo thing of Yo-Yo like had a psychological trauma that basically gave her power limiters. She's a full-blown speedster, but like, if you're unfamiliar, Yo-Yo could like speed toward a direction for a limited amount of time. Like however far she could get within the time in between heartbeats. And the moment, in that space, like the moment her heart beats again, she snaps back to where she was originally. hence Yo-Yo. But near the end of the series, spoilers, she found out, oh my god, it's a psychological block keeping me. That's not how my powers originally work. I am just a full-blown speedster. I don't ever have to return to my original position. So I'm wondering if Lily is kind of like that. That basically, she's believing like she buried her powers because she didn't want to deal with them. Because she dealt with it when she was younger, but she's like, yeah, it came back when she was getting older. And she just, because even that time with Teen last episode, which was 3 years ago, when she met William, not Billy, William Kaplan and not Billy Maximoff, she had the moment where she was reading tarot, but it doesn't seem like she was slipping or between the gaps like she is now. And she's like, it's gotten worse. So that, once again, I love that it's like, yeah, it's been this thing the entire show. You're like, what is that? What's going on there? What is she seeing? And now you have that answer of like, every time she's been saying something crazy, it's because she's from the future going back to a moment, saying something so out of place. But now in the grand scheme of things, you're like, oh my god, when she told, like, don't save Agatha, it's like, oh, because she knows what was going to happen. That was her trying to warn Alice about trying to save Agatha, but the person she said it to instead was Agatha. And she's like, yeah, like, let's kind of find these ingredients. I was like, oh, dude, it makes so much sense what that's all about. And just like little moments throughout, even moments you didn't realize was her kind of slipping. Like her, like, oh, was that her on the drugs when she's like, oh, I love you guys. And it's like, oh, you guys have become like a coven to me. All those moments were moments she was slipping, because it kind of seemed like, at least the one where she was like, hey, you guys, we've become like a coven. And then she got quiet, and then Jen and Alice were like, where do you go? And it's like, because she had already slipped in that moment. And I was like, oh, dude, that's so good. And I like how like out of sequence it is, because it's so tiny. I'm a sucker for some timey-wiminess. So I really enjoy that. And obviously it gives us a real insight into Lilia. I mean, as she said in the intro, like in the recap, it's like, right, I like... I got chased around. It was because I predicted tragedies accurately. Like, I would get chased around and people would be so pissed at me because they blame her. That sadly is the situation. You predict enough tragedies, it's more like a, nah, you must be the one that caused it type of thing. So for her, she had been slipping through these gaps at a very young age, and eventually it just stopped because she ignored it. She didn't want it anymore. Understandably, when all you see is death, she even finally talks to her master about it. It's like, I saw our coven dying from a fever, and even telling you it didn't change anything, because it just seems like things are set in stone. It's kind of what's meant to happen is meant to happen, and there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it, I think. That thing, like, and then she says, like, time is an illusion, and it's so interesting, because, like, it's like this very, like, I don't know if it's a real theoretical or whether that's just like fiction talk about like how time isn't as linear as people think it is. I don't know if there's like real theoretics in it, but like I've always loved the notion of like time travel stuff of like time isn't linear. Time is happening all at once. In this one moment you're in, the past and the present, it's all, and the future, it's all overlapping. You're just in one particular moment, but time is just, it's such an abstract construct of like, it's flowing all over. It's never like a singular thing of, here's the past, here's the present, here's the future. It's all jumbled together, happening at the same time. There's some version of me in the past happening right now, some version of me in the future happening at this very moment, kind of happening side by side in a way, if that makes any sense. So I've always liked that concept, and that's, I think, what Lilia gets at about time being illusion. It's not so straightforward. And I guess we can go by, The Good Place. It's a Jeremy bury me type of situation, so. But yeah, like Lilia, like I said, slipping in and out of the knowledge she's telling Jen, and it's just like, she's like, yeah, the son of the Scarlet Witch sent her. The who? It's like, you just told me. And she's like, what, you think I'm kooky? You think I'm crazy? It's like, you're kind of a little more kookier than ever. And it's just like, yeah, she tells Jen what this was all about. In the grand scheme of things, of like, yeah, I've been slipping in time. And like I said, she's going back to talk to her master. And it's just like, what am I not seeing? It's like, you're so busy, kind of denying your power and your path ahead because you're afraid. The whole death conversation, because that's what it is. Because that's what, it's like, it's coming to an end. And Jen's like, what, us at the end of the road? She's like, maybe, but maybe not. And kind of implying like death is coming for me. And it's a scary thing. Like, even as long as witches come from, like, even her master was like, death comes for us all. And she's like, how can you say that so nonchalantly? Because she's like, it is the one thing everyone in this world has in common. No one can escape death in that capacity, you know? Very Final Destination-esque. I mean, that's the whole antithesis of those movies. Yeah, you can try and divert it as much as possible, but death will always find a way right back to catch up with you type of situation. So, which we also get the reveal that some people had theorized. I think this was the thing that was like spoiled in Funko Pops. Once again, I think there were people saying like, yeah, there's spoilers amongst the Funko Pops. I've never actually heard what the spoiler was because I've always managed to avoid it. But I think it is the whole Rio thing, because apparently that was a theory people had about who she could be. Once again, I think I said that before, like, well, Rio could be like a female Mephisto, but we don't really know, or she could be Death, Lady Death, and it turns out that she is. So. Picked a great actress to portray a sexy Lady Death. I mean, Aubrey Plaza just naturally beautiful and sexy, so it's just like, hell yeah. But either way. But also, I really like when she plays like a dark character, like, in this case, Rio/Death, or whether it's like Lenny from Legion. Once again, if you've never seen Legion, dude, like, Aubrey Plaza is so damn good in that show, especially like when she... The nature of that show and the character she plays and the evolution of that character is so, not the trajectory you thought that character would go. It's actually poignant, actually, and really interesting when you think about where that character's story ends up playing out in the final season in conjunction with her being Lady Death in this. It's just something kind of interesting to think about. It also is so befitting that she took... I mean, how did Rio show up here? She rose from death. It's like, oh, here, Sharon's dead body, and we're doing a whole ritual to bring us a green witch, which is interesting to find out that death was... I don't know if... I've never heard death being represented as a witch. It's kind of interesting to know, like, oh, death was the first green witch, which is like, oh, that's so interesting, making death a witch. Which I think that's so fascinating. But I just thought that was so interesting. But it's like I said, like, it's kind of like death has been a passenger this entire time with you down these, like, trials and stuff. And why she was so nonchalant. Because it's like, none of this really matters to me. I'm just here for the ride because I'm here to, I guess, reap your souls. Like, we don't know how death... I mean, once again, people who've read the comics might know how death operates in the comics. I don't know if they're going to... I don't even know if that's going to be the same way they operate her in the MCU like they do in the comics. Is it going to be I don't know how her whole deal works in this universe. Either universe, like I said, whether it's comics or whether it's the MCU itself. Like I said, I love the whole out of sequence situation of like her like finding herself during the trial and then attacking Teen being like, yo, it's like, whoa, you said we were good. And it's just, you know, and her admitting to Teen, it's like, right, I met you at your bar mitzvah, but granted, he doesn't remember because you met William, you didn't meet Billy. And even his question was, am I William or am I Billy? She's like, oh, that's a good question. And the thing is, we don't really have an answer to it. I thought, like, my immediate thought was, oh my God, William is gone, his soul left the body, and it's just Billy. But people had brought up, like, oh, does that mean William's still in there? And I was like, I didn't really think about that. I just assumed William's soul was gone, but it's like, maybe he is somewhere inside. Like, maybe like Tommy's soul is out there. Maybe maybe William's is too. Is he both? I mean, because he's still trying to struggle with his identity of like, am I William Kaplan or am I Billy Maximoff? Because I feel a connection to William Kaplan because of my parents, but they're not really my parents. They're, you know, Wanda and Vision are my parents. So am I Billy Maximoff? And, you know, there's so much, like, he has animosity towards his mom because he found out of what she's done and, you know, what she put people through. It's like, oh, my mom's a villain. You know, what does that make me? Like, am I destined to become a villain too? He didn't mean to do what he did to Lilia and Jen, but it's like, yeah, I couldn't control my powers. I think it's interesting that he could read Lilia's mind, But maybe, well, he even said like it's because her mind is so loud versus like, oh, he couldn't read Agatha's because that's like Fort Knox, I'm sure, but because she's probably always been weary of, let me be careful around this kid because she always had an inkling on who he might be, but still. I also thought it was interesting too, Lilia's reason. She's like, oh, the reason why I put the sigil on you is because you have such great potential. You need more time. I even love the first tarot she drew for him was the Magician, and it was like very befitting. Because she thought like, right, the traveler she was supposed to be reading tarots for was him, but then the swords keep dropping over and over, and the ceiling is still coming down. So it's like, right, it's not about Billy. It's not until she was bouncing around between talking to Jen and explaining everything, because the Salem 7 are after them, and Jen's like, oh, this way leads out of the trial, but Lilia's like, no, Billy and Agatha need me, so I need to go. She's like, I hope you'll join me, because like Jen made it clear in episode, well, it's a Agatha and Jen conversation in episode 2 where Jen is like, I don't want to join this, like, I don't care about the covens and stuff like that, like the whole like element of, oh, like this moldy old coven, like how it works and stuff like that. But Agatha was like, right, you do miss it. That is like, yeah, it's antiquated and it's old, but she'd give anything to be a part of it again. And that's kind of what this is, of like, as makeshift and as messed up as it is, it's like this is the closest she's been to having and being a part of a coven in so long that she just kind of, she wants to help. She wants to be a part of it because they have become her coven, as messed up as they are. So it's like, right, we kind of have to look after each other. So, because this is probably the first coven. It's definitely the first coven like a lot of them have been in. Some of them their entire life, like an Alice or Teen. But also for Lilia and Jen, it's been so long. Probably way longer for Jen, probably way longer for Agatha, because I mean, you know how you know it's been a long time since she killed her previous coven and everything. So, but either way, she realizes is like, I'm not supposed to be reading the Teen. I'm the traveler, and she puts down all the cards. The cards all representing things that were there most of the part. Like obviously, it's like the first one was like the Queen of Cups. That was like her when she was younger, just representing her in general. But the 3 Pentacle Stars, it's like, once again, the little clue of like, oh, that's back when she helped recruit, like she wrote down the list of the people that are supposed to join Agatha's coven. But in like each card, you know, like the Knight being Alice, the Priestess being Jen, and just like the little things here and there, each one, like what was it, like the 3 of Swords is Agatha when she was on top of like Teen when she thought he was dead. So it's little stuff like that where it's like everything, it's each one of the tarot cards is representing them as a coven. And I was just like, oh, I thought that was so beautifully done. And then finally you get to Rio, who popped up just when they fell, because it all comes down to like, right, she was like, I'm falling, and she was talking to her master, she's like, I'm falling, I will fall. And then Rio revealed herself as Death. And it turns out Agatha knew all along. Funny enough. And it's like, she's like, yeah, what can I say? I like the bad boys. So it came down to the wire, but luckily they were able to complete the tarots. And she gave a warning to, you know, message to each and every one of them, and then stayed behind. And it's just like, right, the animals that we saw in episode 2 were all the manifestations of the Salem 7. And, you know, Lilia had like a really badass moment where she's just kind of like, this is where you shouldn't be, because sticking around after, you never know this, but like disaster happens after a trial is completed, and she turns the tower upside down, and then they all flip, and I was like, I love how that was beautifully done, and they're all falling, I was like, towards the swords, and we see the Salem 7 get impaled. We don't see Lilia die on screen, so she could still be alive, granted, because there could be a fortuitousness of where she lands, because quite a few of the swords fell from the ceiling, so there's a good chance she didn't die, but they leave that open-ended. So once again, we don't know if any of these deaths, like Sharon or Alice or potential Lilia, will be reversed at the end of the road, or whether these deaths stick. who knows? But once again, the whole notion is that death comes for us all, and who knows? And then like the ending, there's something beautiful about it, and her master being like, so let's begin, and then it's her at a young age again. Like it's almost like it's all, you saw the end of her story, and it's like here we are at the beginning of her story again, and it's just kind of like the cycle of what this is and what it represents. And I was like, there's something sad, but also something kind of sweet and beautiful about that aspect of it. I really love this episode. Once again, I think it's a heady concept of like, once again, the time slipping of it all, like consciousness wise, but I love what that meant for Lilia's character and how like they were able to utilize that as like her coming to terms of her powers. Like I said, we didn't get to see it, but she was some version of herself. She was able to draw from like knowledge of the future to warn Agatha, and even say like Jin has to go first because she's the high priestess. She has to be the one that leads them in a way. So I wonder, we're going to find out this isn't Agatha's coven, it's Jin's coven. I wonder, is that what that's going to be? That it's not even Billy's coven, you know? I don't know. I'm really curious to see what happens. Next episode, I think I brought this up last week. If I'm not mistaken, episodes 8 and 9, I do believe, are going to be dropped at the same time. So I'm so curious to see how this plays out in the penultimate episode and the series finale, because it doesn't seem like there will be a season 2 to this. It is a one and done. So I'm curious to see how this plays out, because the next trials, because this was Lilia's trial, the only ones left would be Billy and Agatha. So I'd assume hers is next, and then Billy's not listed, it's Billy's and then hers. We'll see how this all plays out, what they find at the end of the road, and what these trials actually will be, and how they manifest, and what the solutions to them will be, especially because they are down to the final 3. Interesting enough. And when is Rio gonna pop up again? I guess it's like, I'm always here, you might not always see me, but death is always present type of situation. So, but yeah, really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.